The ambulance can't enter without authorization,
said Linda Bracewell, president of our HOA board, her tone clipped, smug, final. The red lights flashed across her pastel blazer as she stood squarely in front of the iron gate, clipboard in hand like a badge of power. I'm sorry, but policy is policy. We can't just let emergency vehicles through without prior clearance. The paramedic shouted from the driver's window, "Ma'am, she's in cardiac arrest." But Linda didn't flinch. She adjusted her pearl earring instead. Behind her, the heavy gate loomed, a wall of iron and arrogance. The engine revved. My sister's life was ticking away, second by second, behind that barrier. I slammed the truck door and stepped out, gravel crunching under my boots. "You think your bylaws outrank a pulse?" I asked, voice low, every word trembling with heat. She turned, surprised. I was already holding the gate's override box in my hand, the small steel unit she'd had replaced last month without city approval. "Funny thing," I added, "that model, I helped design its failsafe system 15 years ago." Her confidence faltered. The guard at the booth, Paulie Tran, shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between us. The paramedic shouted again, but she didn't move. She thought I was bluffing. If you've ever watched someone in authority gamble with a human life over paperwork, you know that kind of silence. Cold, heavy, unnatural. Subscribe right now, because what happened next didn't just change our street, it changed the entire county's emergency laws. "My name's Ethan Rourke," I said, forcing myself calm. "Civil engineer, Nevada state licensed. I built access systems like this for a living, including the ones the city uses for fire and rescue gates." Her face went pale. "And my sister's inside that house on Birchview, 3 blocks in. She's a heart patient. You've got about 90 seconds before I make this your problem in a way you'll never forget." But she still didn't move. She raised her hand, palm out, like she was controlling the scene. "If we make one exception, everyone will want to break protocol," she said. "You can call the HOA hotline after hours if it's urgent." That line. If it's urgent. My sister's chest rising and falling on that hospital bed flashed in my mind. The soft hum of her oxygen tank. The way she'd smiled that morning, saying she finally felt strong enough to sit by the window. I could still smell the antiseptic on my hands from changing her bandages earlier that day. Emily had survived heart surgery, endured months of rehab, and moved here only because I'd promised her peace. Silver Pines was supposed to be safe, a quiet place with manicured lawns and clear skies. I'd never told her what the gate meant to me, how I'd chosen this neighborhood because its layout matched the specifications I once drew for my first project as an engineer. I thought it would protect her. Now, under the glare of flashing lights, that same gate stood between her and the people trying to save her. The thing I once built to let help in had become a symbol of everything wrong with this place. The paramedics started pounding on the horn. The sound ripped through the night, echoing off the stucco walls of the silent homes around us. Curtains twitched, neighbors peered out, no one stepped forward. Just a dozen quiet witnesses hiding behind blinds, while a woman's life faded behind a locked gate. Paulie finally broke. "Linda, just open it," he muttered, hands trembling. "We can't keep doing this." She shot him a glare that could have cracked glass. "If you override it, you're fired." That's when I moved. I crouched beside the override panel, yanked open the latch she'd ordered replaced illegally, and hit the emergency bypass. Sparks jumped, the metal groaned, and the gate jerked halfway open before freezing. Not enough room for the ambulance. I could hear Emily's address repeating over the radio, the urgency growing desperate. Linda stepped forward, trying to grab my arm. "You don't have permission to—" "Permission?" I snapped. "You lost that when you denied a heartbeat." The gate finally lurched open another few inches, groaning like it was ashamed of itself. The ambulance squeezed through, sirens wailing, metal scraping paint off the side mirrors. I followed on foot, chest tight, adrenaline pulsing like electricity. When they carried Emily out minutes later, pale and limp, Linda stood back with her arms folded, trying to look unfazed. But I saw the truth flicker behind her eyes. The fear that maybe, just maybe, this time she'd gone too far. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. Because deep down, she knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Linda's eyes followed the ambulance as it disappeared down the road, blue lights cutting through the dark. The gate stood twisted and half open, one hinge screaming in protest. The smell of burnt wiring hung in the air. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. I just looked at her once, long enough for her to know I'd remember this moment until my last breath. Then I got in my truck and followed the ambulance. By the time I reached the hospital, the hallway was filled with machines beeping in rhythm with my sister's heart. They'd stabilized her, but the doctor's face told me how close it had been. "Another 5 minutes," he said quietly. "You got lucky." Lucky. That word hit like gravel in my throat. Emily was unconscious, a tangle of tubes and pale skin against white sheets. I sat beside her bed until dawn, thinking of that gate. That wasn't luck. It was survival, in spite of negligence. And negligence has names. When I finally walked out into the morning light, my phone buzzed. An email from the Silver Pines HOA. Subject line, violation, emergency access abuse. I opened it, standing right there in the hospital parking lot. Homeowner Rourke, your actions on date resulted in property damage and unauthorized override of HOA-controlled systems. You are hereby fined $1,100 for gate interference and endangering community safety. Below, it was a note from Linda Bracewell, signed in her neat digital signature. We sympathize with your family emergency, but rules exist for a reason. That was the moment anger stopped being heat and turned into precision. I forwarded the email to my own inbox, created a folder named Evidence, and started documenting. When I returned home that evening, a bright orange violation notice was already taped to my garage door. Unauthorized emergency access, pending lien action. My neighbors avoided eye contact as they watered their lawns. Polly wasn't at the gatehouse. A new guard sat there, stiff and silent. Inside, I poured a cup of cold coffee and opened the HOA bylaws on my computer. I'd helped write better access systems for cities across this county, so I knew what I was looking for. Silver Pines' emergency response clause was riddled with contradictions. The bylaws cited City Code 18.9 for access management, but that code hadn't existed since 2014. They'd copied an outdated ordinance word for word and pretended it gave them power. I drafted a note to Linda requesting all gate access logs for that night, citing Nevada's Homeowner Transparency Statute, Section 1-16-31175. I worded it cleanly, legally, and hit send. No response. The next morning, my company trucks, 3 of them parked in my driveway, had orange tags slapped across their windshields. Unauthorized commercial vehicles. I laughed under my breath. She was doubling down, turning the screws one by one. If her goal was to break me, she'd picked the wrong man. I'd worked 16-hour shifts in the desert, heat pouring asphalt over flood drains. I'd stared down city inspectors who'd buried half the county in red tape. I knew bureaucracy, but this was something darker. It wasn't about policy. It was about control. Around noon, I got a call from Paulie. His voice was low, shaky. "They told me not to talk to you," he said. Said it was an internal matter, but I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry, man. I tried to tell her." "She had the footage deleted, didn't she?" I asked. Silence. Then a quiet exhale. "Be careful, Ethan. She doesn't play fair." The line went dead. That night, I sat on my porch with the violation papers spread out like a war map. Every page was a symbol of how something meant to protect homeowners had become a tool to crush them. I watched the same gate in the distance flicker under the security lights, its steel bars bent, still unrepaired. I thought of how Emily used to trace my hand with her finger when she was little, saying I had builder's hands. She used to say, "You make the roads, Ethan. You make the paths that save people." Now, the system I'd helped build was being used to help out. Linda had crossed a line, and she didn't even realize it yet. In her arrogance, she'd left a trail, a digital one, full of timestamps and city permit gaps that I could already see forming a pattern. I wasn't going to fight her with anger. I was going to fight her with proof. As the lights in the neighborhood clicked off one by one, I wrote my first formal complaint to the county's community safety office. I listed the unapproved system replacement, the obstructed emergency vehicle, the deleted footage, and the bylaws citing non-existent code. Then I hit send, and for the first time since that night, I felt something close to calm, because this time, the battle wouldn't happen behind a gate. It would happen under the law. The complaint was sent. The confirmation email blinked back at me like a quiet promise, but I knew better than to expect instant results. Bureaucracy moves slower than guilt. What I needed now wasn't another file or form. I needed the truth from someone who'd seen what really happened that night. And there was only one man who had. The next morning, I found Paulie Tran sitting inside the gatehouse, staring at the wall like it had done something personal to him. The hum of the monitor filled the small booth. The air smelled faintly of burnt circuits from the damaged override box outside. He didn't look up when I knocked. "Morning," I said. "You got a minute?" He flinched, just slightly, but enough for me to see the fear already sitting on his shoulders. His hands tightened around the coffee cup, like it was the only thing keeping him steady. He didn't say no, but he didn't invite me in either. I stepped closer, leaning against the glass. "You were here that night," I said quietly. "You saw what happened." His jaw twitched. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting toward the security camera in the corner. "I shouldn't be talking about it," he muttered. "They told me it's an internal matter. They told you to delete the footage." That landed like a slap. His face went pale, and for a second, his coffee cup rattled against the counter. He didn't deny it. He just exhaled, long and heavy, like a man trying to push something out of his chest that had been trapped too long. I could tell he was caught between survival and conscience. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. They kept flicking toward the gate outside, to the same spot where the ambulance lights had painted his world red and blue. His knee bounced under the desk, rhythm quick and uneven. When he finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. "I didn't want to," he said. "She told me if I didn't erase it, she'd call the security company and say I compromised community privacy. Said I could lose my license." He looked up at me finally, and the shame in his face hit harder than anger ever could. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. She said the gate would open. She said it was just a malfunction." I studied him carefully. He wasn't lying. He was broken by the truth. I'd seen that same expression before. Construction site accidents, safety inspectors who realized they'd signed off on something that failed. That hollow look of guilt that doesn't fade even when you wash your hands. "She replaced the gate system illegally," I said. "Her brother's company. No permit, no city approval. The lock doesn't have a first responder override." Paulie's shoulders slumped. He closed his eyes like he already knew, but couldn't bear to hear it confirmed. "I figured something was off," he said. "The system was cheap, wires mismatched, override lines cut shorter than regulation. I tried to tell her we needed to report it, but she said she'd handle it internally." "Did she tell you to lie to the county when they come?" He hesitated, throat tightening, Adam's apple bobbing once. "She said if an inspector asks, I'm to say the override worked, but you tampered with it." That was it. The whole rotten structure laid bare in one trembling voice. I didn't need anger anymore. I needed precision. I stepped closer, lowering my tone. "Paulie, the county's going to investigate. When they do, you'll have one chance to tell the truth. If you help them, you're protected. If you cover for her, you go down with her." He nodded slowly, but his hands betrayed him, fingers drumming, then stopping, then starting again. He wanted to believe me, but didn't trust that truth still mattered. "I got a kid," he said finally. "Single dad. I can't lose my job." "Then don't lose your name," I said. "Jobs come back, reputations don't." He stared at the gate for a long time. Cars passed quietly on the other side, residents flashing badges to the sensor like nothing had ever happened here. The world moved forward while his conscience stayed trapped in that booth. When he finally looked back at me, something in him had shifted. His shoulders straightened just slightly. "If they ask," he said, "I'll tell them what she did, but you didn't hear it from me, not yet." I nodded. "That's enough for now?" As I walked away, I glanced once more through the glass. Paulie was still sitting there, head in his hands, elbows pressed against the counter. His coffee sat untouched. The man who'd guarded the gate now guarded a secret that could end Linda's reign. The sun hit the bent metal as I reached my truck, turning it gold for a moment. A broken gate catching light, proof that even damage can reveal what's been hidden. Linda thought she'd silenced everyone. She didn't realize one of her own was already unraveling the truth from the inside. By the next HOA meeting, the story of the gate incident had spread through Silver Pines like static in the air, distorted, half true, but loud enough to sting. Some said I'd destroyed community property. Others whispered that Linda had delayed an ambulance. Nobody wanted to say out loud what they all knew, that a woman almost died because a rule mattered more than her pulse. The clubhouse was packed when I walked in. Rows of beige folding chairs faced a polished wooden table where the board sat like a firing squad. Linda Bracewell was at the center, pearls gleaming under fluorescent light. Her gavel tapped once, sharp enough to slice through the whispers. "Meeting called to order," she announced, smiling too wide. First topic, community safety violations committed by resident Ethan Rourke. I didn't sit. I just stood near the back, hands in my jacket pockets, listening as she listed off charges: property damage, harassment, unsafe conduct. She spoke like she was reading a grocery list. When she reached the word bulldozer, someone in the audience gasped. It didn't matter that the truth was simpler. I'd used an emergency override to save a life. She needed a villain, and I was the perfect one. The board voted quickly, all in favor of a formal penalty. $2,000 fine. Loss of gate privileges pending attitude review. The motion carried. Linda's smile returned. "We can't allow individual residents to act without authorization," she said. "Rules protect everyone." I felt the tension rise in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "Rules protect people when they're written by the right hands," I said. "Yours weren't." That got her attention. Her lips tightened. "If you have a concern, you may file it in writing." "I already did," I said, "with the county." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. For the first time, Linda looked unsure. She tried to recover, knocking her gavel again. "Moving on, landscaping compliance for—" But the room wasn't listening anymore. Every eye had turned to her. For a brief moment, I saw what real power looked like when it started to slip. I walked out before she could finish. The air outside felt thick with heat, the kind that clings to Nevada evenings. Across the parking lot, the community notice board glowed under a single bulb. A new notice had been posted. HOA introduces new residential conduct code, effective immediately. I scanned the printout and felt my jaw tighten. Clause 4.2. Any homeowner who files external complaints without prior HOA mediation may face community sanctions. It was retaliation, dressed as procedure. She'd written a rule overnight just to make sure nobody else followed my lead. Later that night, a message slid under my front door. Anonymous, printed on plain paper. "You're right about the permits. Check who paid for the new gate installation. It wasn't the HOA, it was her brother's company. No signature, but I didn't need one. Paulie." The next morning, I drove to my construction office downtown. My assistant, Rosa, handed me a folder of invoices from our latest city project, and for a moment, the world felt normal again. Blueprints, deadlines, reality. Then I turned my screen back on. My inbox was full. Messages from neighbors. Some were supportive. Quiet thank yous from people too afraid to speak publicly. Others were warnings. "She's watching you. She's contacting your clients." By noon, one of my county bids had been postponed indefinitely. Linda had made a few calls. It was obvious now. This wasn't about a gate anymore. It was about silencing the one person who knew where her wires crossed. I opened the city's contractor registry and searched for the company that had installed Silver Pine's gate. Bracewell Access Solutions, LLC, filed under her brother's name, but the address matched Linda's personal mailbox. I took a screenshot, time-stamped it, and added it to my growing evidence folder. Still, there was something I couldn't find. No record of inspection, no permit approval, no fire department integration file, which meant the system hadn't just been replaced illegally, it had been hidden entirely. That night, I stood by my sister's bedside again. Emily was awake this time, weak but smiling faintly. "You look tired," she said softly. "Promise me you're not doing something stupid." "I'm just fixing something broken," I told her. She squeezed my hand. "Then, make sure it stays fixed." As I left the hospital, the desert wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of wind chimes from someone's porch. It reminded me that this place, these people, had paid Linda to protect them, not control them. Back home, I sat on my porch and watched the same gate shimmer under the security lights. I could almost see Linda's reflection in the steel, rigid, self-righteous, and cracking. She'd built her power on silence. But now, between the county complaint and Paulie's quiet conscience, the cracks were widening. She thought she'd written the rules. She forgot who designed the system they depended on. The next morning, I parked outside the Clark County Public Works office, a squat concrete building that smelled faintly of dust and old paper. My complaint had been logged, but I needed confirmation from someone who could make it real, someone who could look past the bureaucracy and see the danger hiding behind Silver Pine's iron gates. Inside, a clerk directed me to an engineer named Rick Morales, one of the county's infrastructure inspectors. He was a short man with a sunburned face and the steady calm of someone who'd seen too many corner-cut jobs. I introduced myself, handed him the printouts, and waited while he scanned through them. "You're saying the HOA replaced the gate system without filing for an access permit?" he asked finally. "Not just replaced it," I said. "They stripped out the emergency override completely. No universal responder key, no direct line to the fire department. My sister almost died because of it." Rick frowned, flipping through my documentation. "That's a big claim, Mr. Rourke. You have proof?" "I'm an engineer," I said. "I know what those connections are supposed to look like. I've inspected thousands of systems. Their installation doesn't meet even the minimum code." He leaned back, skeptical but curious. "You know how many homeowners tell me the HOA's breaking a rule every week?" "This isn't about weeds or fences," I said. "It's about a gate that blocked an ambulance. That's criminal obstruction under county law." He tapped his pen on the desk. The hesitation wasn't disbelief, it was politics. A county inspector taking on a homeowner's board meant paperwork, hearings, angry phone calls. But I could see the calculation in his eyes. If he ignored this and someone else died, it would be on him. "All right," he said at last. "I'll pull the permit history and see what comes up." While he typed, I studied the walls. Photos of collapsed culverts, sinkholes, derailed projects. All examples of what happens when oversight fails. It felt fitting. After a minute, Rick's brow furrowed. "That's odd," he murmured. "Silver Pines isn't showing a replacement permit for the last 6 years. Only a maintenance log from 2018, and that's for repainting, not reinstallation." I leaned forward. "So there's no official record of the system that's there now?" "None," he said. "That means either someone falsified the entry, or it never went through us at all." I nodded slowly. "Linda Bracewell," I said. "She chairs the HOA. Her brother owns a company called Bracewell Access Solutions." Rick's fingers froze over the keyboard. "That name sounds familiar. We flagged that firm 2 years ago for using expired certifications on security installations." There it was, the first official crack in the wall. "Can you open an inspection?" I asked. He sighed. "If I do, it triggers a full site review. But I'll need documentation, photos, contractor receipts, anything that proves installation. Without that, the complaint stalls." "I can get you everything," I said. Rick gave me his card. "Then bring it to me, and make sure you're right. Once I file, there's no taking it back." I walked out into the sunlight, adrenaline buzzing through me. For the first time, the law wasn't an obstacle, it was a weapon. That afternoon, I headed straight to my construction yard on the outskirts of town. My crew was finishing a drainage project, sparks flying from welders, engines roaring in the background. I climbed into the small trailer that doubled as my office, opened my laptop, and started pulling every public record I could find on Bracewell Access Solutions. Their contractor's license had expired 6 months before the Silver Pines gate was installed. The business address was a P.O. box. No city inspection certificates, no system testing log, and no vendor ID for emergency integration. It was everything I needed. I organized the files into a clean packet, labeled Unpermitted Installation, Silver Pines Estates, attached screenshots, and drafted a brief summary in precise, professional language. Every sentence was factual, emotion stripped away, designed to hold up under county scrutiny. When I hit send, I copied Paulie's number from my phone. He answered on the second ring, voice uneasy. "They're asking questions about you," he said. "Linda called a special session. She says you're spreading false claims about her brother's company." "She's not going to like the county's version of false," I replied. "An inspector's on his way. Tell her to have her paperwork ready." Paulie didn't respond right away. I could almost hear him thinking, weighing the distance between loyalty and justice. "You're going to burn this place down, aren't you?" he said quietly. "Not the place," I said. "Just the rot." That night, I sat in my truck near the gate, watching headlights glide across the pavement as residents came home. I could see the crooked wiring snaking up the post, the one Linda's brother had installed himself. It wasn't just metal, it was evidence. And now, for the first time, I wasn't the only one who knew. 2 nights later, the sirens came again. It was after 10, quiet enough that you could hear sprinklers hissing across the lawns, the soft hum of air conditioners, and then suddenly the piercing wail of an ambulance cutting through the stillness. I stepped out onto my porch, heart already racing, because I knew exactly where it was headed: the front gate. Red and blue lights flickered over the stucco walls as the ambulance stopped, trapped in the same place it had been when my sister nearly died. For a moment I stood frozen, waiting, hoping that Linda had learned her lesson. Then I saw it. The gate didn't move, not an inch. I grabbed my keys and sprinted for the truck. Gravel sprayed behind me as I turned the corner, headlights bouncing off the same cursed steel bars. The paramedics were outside their vehicle, shouting at the intercom. One of them pounded his fist against the control panel. "Same malfunction?" I yelled over the siren. "Gate won't open," the driver shouted back. "We called the code in, but your HOA won't clear it." Inside the booth, Paulie was already on the radio, voice shaking. "Central, it's a code red. Override not responding." He caught my eye through the glass, pale as chalk. "Ethan, it's happening again." I didn't think. I jumped out and ran to the fence line, searching for the wiring harness I'd inspected days earlier. "Who's the emergency for?" I shouted. "House 12, one paramedic answered. "Older male, heart failure. House 12, 2 streets over from mine. Mr. Clarkson, retired firefighter. I'd seen him walking his dog every morning at dawn. He was one of the few people who'd thanked me for what I did the night Emily nearly died." The gate buzzed weakly, then died. The motor whined, gears straining. Paulie cursed under his breath, hitting buttons that did nothing. He looked at me through the glass again, eyes wide with guilt. "It's not responding," he shouted. Linda's SUV screeched up behind us. She got out fast, heels clicking, eyes blazing. "What are you doing here again, Ethan?" she barked. "You can't interfere." "They're trying to save a man," I snapped. "Move your car." "You don't give orders here," she shot back. "This is private property." The paramedics were losing precious seconds. One of them tried to force the gate manually, but the lock was welded solid. I could see the despair in his face. "Paulie, hit the manual release," I yelled. He hesitated, hand trembling over the switch. Linda turned on him. "If you touch that, you're done," she warned. His hand hovered in midair. Sweat trickled down his temple. His lips moved, silent, caught between fear and decency. That same haunted look from before, the weight of what he didn't do last time, was written all over him. "Paulie!" I shouted again. "He's dying in there." Then something in him cracked. He slammed the release switch. Sparks flew. The mechanism groaned, and then nothing. The gate stayed locked. "It's fried," he gasped. "The wiring's burned out." I looked at Linda. She was frozen now, finally realizing what she'd done. Her eyes darted from me to the ambulance, to the malfunctioning control box. The authority she'd built on rules was crumbling right there in front of her. "Move your car," I said again, voice low, deadly calm. She shook her head. "You can't." But I was already in motion. I turned and ran back to my truck, jumped in, and hit the ignition. The diesel engine roared to life. The paramedics looked at me, understanding dawning. One of them waved his arm. "Do it!" I floored it. The impact thundered through the night. The old fencing crumpled under the bumper, metal screeching like a wounded animal. The gate tore free, collapsing onto the curb in a shower of sparks. The ambulance surged forward through the gap. The paramedics shouted their thanks as they sped toward House 12, siren wailing again, fading into the distance. Linda just stood there, eyes wide, mouth open, clutching her clipboard like a shield. Paulie sank into his chair inside the booth, staring at the wreckage. For a moment, none of us spoke. The air smelled like smoke and ozone. The only sound was the slow tick of my truck's cooling engine. Then I stepped out and looked at her. "That's twice," I said quietly. "2 people almost died because you wanted control." Her voice cracked. "You've destroyed HOA property." "No," I said. "You destroyed public safety." She backed away as the neighbors started to come out, one by one, drawn by the noise. Phones rose into the air, cameras flashing. Someone whispered my name, another shouted hers, and, Just like that, the story left the gate. It belonged to the community now. The next morning, County Dispatch would get my message. Inspector Morales would see the evidence, the photos, and now, thanks to this, proof of ongoing danger. Linda had tried to control the gate again, and now the whole neighborhood had watched her fail. By sunrise, Silver Pines looked like a crime scene. Yellow caution tape stretched across the mangled gate, and residents gathered in clusters, whispering behind their coffee cups. The HOA board had called an emergency assembly for the evening, but the real damage had already been done. Videos from last night were everywhere. Neighbors had posted them online before dawn. I'd already seen one clip titled, HOA Blocks Ambulance, Resident Breaks, Gate to Save Life. The story was out, and Linda couldn't bury it anymore. I spent the morning in my construction yard, sorting through files and waiting for the county inspector's callback. My phone buzzed constantly, news stations, angry board members, even one of Linda's lawyers warning me about destruction of property. I ignored them all. Every sound in that office felt sharp, metallic. I was tired, but I wasn't done. Around noon, a shadow passed across my window. When I looked up, Paulie Tran was standing there, cap in his hands, face drawn. I opened the door without a word. He stepped in slowly, eyes darting around like he expected Linda herself to be hiding behind my desk. His shoulders were slumped, his voice almost a whisper. "You were right," he said. I closed the door. "About what?" He swallowed hard, setting his cap down on the counter. "About everything, the system, the override, the cover-up." His hands trembled slightly, fingers fidgeting with the seam of his jacket. "After you filed that county complaint, Linda called me to her office, said if anyone asks, I'm supposed to say the gate worked fine, that the delay was on the ambulance's end." I studied him. He couldn't hold eye contact. His body was saying more than his words. His weight shifted from foot to foot, shoulders curling inward like he was trying to make himself smaller. "And?" I asked quietly. "She had me sign a maintenance report," he said. "Backdated it to make it look like we had the system inspected last month. But it wasn't true. The report number she used, it belonged to a totally different property, a gated community up in Summerlin." "Forgery," I said. Paulie nodded once, jaw tight. "I didn't want to, but she threatened to have the security company fire me, said I'd be blacklisted from every HOA job in the county." He sat down heavily on the edge of a filing cabinet, rubbing his face. "I can't sleep, man. Every time I close my eyes, I see those lights flashing again. And then last night, when that old man flatlined in the ambulance before they reached his driveway, his voice broke, and for a moment he looked younger, smaller, swallowed by guilt. I froze. "He didn't make it?" Paulie shook his head slowly. "They revived him on the way to the hospital, but he was gone for almost 2 minutes. EMTs said the delay nearly killed him." I felt something cold move through me. The outrage I'd been holding back since Emily's attack started to harden into focus. "You understand what this means," I said. "That's negligence leading to near-fatal harm. That's not just an HOA violation. It's criminal." He nodded. "That's why I came. I brought something." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small flash drive. The original security logs, the ones she told me to delete. I made a backup before I erased them. I took it, staring at the little device. It felt heavier than metal, like the weight of proof, finally tangible. "I can't testify publicly," he said quickly. "I've got a kid. I can't lose everything." "You won't," I said. "I'll handle the county. All you have to do is stay quiet and safe until Morales reaches out. Once he verifies this, it's out of your hands." Paulie nodded, but his breathing was uneven. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, muttering something under his breath, something that sounded like, "Forgive me." Before he left, he paused at the door. "She's scared, you know," he said softly. "After last night, Linda's unraveling. She called an emergency board meeting not to fix the gate, but to find a way to blame you for everything. She's drafting a statement saying you're unstable, that your sister's medical emergency made you dangerous." I laughed once bitterly. She's about to find out what dangerous really means when the county inspector walks through that gate. Paulie looked up, and for the first time since I'd met him, there was something like relief in his eyes. "Then I guess it's finally over," he said. "Not yet," I replied, "but it's about to be." He left quietly, shoulders still hunched, but lighter somehow. I looked down at the flash drive in my hand and plugged it into my laptop. A black and white video flickered to life. The night of the first incident, the ambulance, the blocked gate, Linda standing in the light, clipboard raised, refusing entry. It was all there, and this time, no one could delete it. The footage looped on my screen until the glow of morning filled my office. Each frame burned deeper, Linda standing in the flashing lights, blocking the ambulance, ordering Paulie to hold the gate. Evidence didn't get clearer than that. For the first time in weeks, the rage I carried began to feel like leverage. I copied the files to a secure drive, printed time-stamped stills, and built a full report with the receipts I'd collected. Permit gaps, expired contractor licenses, and Paulie's statement disguised as anonymous witness testimony. I didn't need fiction. The truth was strong enough. By the time the sun rose over the desert hills, I had built something bulletproof. At 9 sharp, I drove to the Clark County Infrastructure Safety Division, a squat brick building that hummed with fluorescent lights and the smell of printer ink. Inside, Inspector Rick Morales met me in the hallway, coffee in hand, curiosity already written across his face. "You brought something?" he asked. "Proof," I said, setting the folder on his desk. "And a witness who will confirm it when you call him." He opened the folder and scanned the pages, his brow furrowed as he flipped through the photos of the damaged gate. "This was taken after last night's incident?" 10 minutes after, I said. "Ambulance blocked again. This time, a man nearly died." Morales muttered something under his breath, then pulled up the contractor registry on his computer. When he searched for Bracewell Access Solutions, his screen stayed blank for a full minute before showing the same error I'd already seen. License expired. Contractor inactive. He turned to me slowly. "This is bad. You're saying the HOA president installed this system herself?" "With her brother's company," I replied. "No inspection, no city integration, and she forged an inspection log to cover it up." He leaned back, letting out a low whistle. "You realize what this means, Mr. Rourke? If the HOA spent association funds on unlicensed work, that's fraud. If someone almost died because of it, it's obstruction." "That's why I came to you first," I said. "I didn't go to the press. I came here." He nodded once. "I'll file for an emergency review. We'll inspect Silver Pines within 48 hours. But I need you to stay out of the way when we arrive. You're a complainant now, not an investigator." I smiled faintly. "Understood. Just make sure you bring a camera." As I walked out, I felt the first true sense of momentum. Something irreversible had been set in motion. But when I reached the parking lot, a black SUV was waiting near my truck. Linda's driver's side window rolled down slowly. "Mr. Rourke," she said, voice icy. "Enjoying your little crusade?" I didn't answer. "You've embarrassed this community," she continued. "You've made us a spectacle. If you think this ends with a county visit, you're mistaken." I leaned closer, my voice even. "It's not me you should be worried about. It's the state inspector who'll see your name on those invoices." Her smile twitched. "You're bluffing." "Check your email," I said, and walked away. By the time I drove home, Morales had already called back. The inspection was confirmed for the following morning. He was bringing a full compliance team. That evening, the neighborhood buzzed like a hive. Rumors spread faster than truth ever could. Some said I was suing the HOA, others said the county was shutting us down. For once, the fear wasn't mine. It was hers. I spent the night preparing. I printed copies of every document Paulie had helped me recover. The fake maintenance report, the contractor screenshots, and the video stills. I labeled them all neatly and placed them in a binder marked for county review. At midnight, I walked to the edge of my driveway and looked down the street. The broken gate stood open, motionless, its motor still dead. The same lights that once symbolized control now flickered weakly, powerless. Paulie texted me just before I went inside. "They're saying Linda's calling an emergency HOA meeting tomorrow. She's freaking out." I replied, "Good. Let her panic first. We'll let the law do the rest." The desert wind picked up, carrying dust across the asphalt. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled low and heavy, like a warning. Tomorrow, the county would arrive. And when they did, the truth Paulie risked everything to reveal would burn through every lie she'd built. Morning came wrapped in tension. The air felt heavier than usual, the kind that sticks to your skin before a storm breaks. By the time I stepped outside, a line of county vehicles had already pulled up along the curb, white trucks with the Clark County seal stamped on the doors. Inspector Morales climbed out first, wearing a reflective vest and a face that said he was ready for a fight. Behind him, two assistants unloaded tripods, cameras, and clipboards. Residents began trickling out from their homes, drawn by the sound of diesel engines and the faint hum of confrontation. Across the street, Linda Bracewell appeared in her signature blazer, her phone pressed to her ear as she whispered orders to someone unseen. She was pacing, jaw tight, movements sharp and rehearsed. Morales spotted me and gave a curt nod. "Mr. Rourke," he said, "you're here as a witness. Stay clear while we start the assessment." "I understand," I said. "Everything's documented, photos, license logs, witness statements." He gestured toward the gate. "Then let's see how deep this goes." The inspectors began their work, methodical and precise. They opened the access panel, photographing the wiring before touching anything. Within minutes, one of them called Morales over. "Sir, this control box isn't certified. No manufacturer label, no date code." Morales crouched down, running his fingers along the severed wires. "And this? Non-standard installation. Whoever did this bypassed the fire department override entirely." I watched Linda from across the street. Her posture stiffened with every word. She hung up her phone and marched toward us. "Excuse me," she snapped. "You can't just tear apart our property without authorization." Morales stood up slowly, clipboard in hand. "Ma'am, this is a county-mandated inspection under Section 17.4 of the Public Safety Code. You've got bigger problems than authorization." Her tone faltered, but only slightly. "This is harassment. This man," she pointed at me, "is a disgruntled resident trying to destroy our community's reputation." Morales flipped a page on his clipboard. "And yet," he said evenly, "your contractor's license is expired, your equipment is unregistered, and your access system has no recorded permit. Care to explain that, Mrs. Bracewell?" Her mouth opened, then closed. The color drained from her face. Around us, the neighbors had started recording on their phones again, catching every second. One of the inspectors pulled a document from the wiring box. "Sir," he said to Morales, "found this stuff behind the panel. Looks like a service invoice." Morales took it, scanned it once, and let out a short, humorless laugh. "Bracewell Access Solutions," he read aloud. "Same name as your brother's company, ma'am." The silence that followed was perfect. You could feel it settle like dust. Linda's voice trembled for the first time. That's just coincidence. He offered a discount to the HOA. It was approved by the board." Morales didn't look convinced. "We'll verify that," he said. "But right now, this system poses a clear safety hazard. We're ordering it shut down immediately." The moment the words left his mouth, a murmur swept through the crowd. People turned to each other, whispering angrily, residents who had once been silent, now realizing what Linda's rules had cost them. "Can you fix it?" I asked Morales quietly. "We'll install a temporary manual gate until proper equipment's approved," he said. "And after this, the HOA won't be allowed to handle its own systems. City oversight only." Behind us, Linda was unraveling. She tried calling someone again, her voice rising into a frantic pitch. "I want my lawyer here right now. They can't do this." But no one was listening to her anymore. The authority she'd wielded for years had just dissolved under daylight. Morales turned back to me. "That footage you provided, it's going into the report. You did the right thing, Mr. Rourke. Without it, this could have dragged on for months." I nodded, though my focus had already shifted. Paulie was standing near the crowd, hands in his pockets, watching everything unfold. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw the relief there, the weight he'd carried for weeks finally starting to lift. Then Morales raised his voice for everyone to hear. "Effective immediately. Silver Pines Estates gate system is condemned pending reconstruction. No resident is to obstruct emergency services for any reason." The crowd erupted, some cheering, others shouting questions. But it didn't matter. The message was clear. The gate that had once symbolized control was now a monument to its own failure. As the inspectors packed up, Morales handed me a copy of the preliminary report. "We'll finish the paperwork in 48 hours, he said. "Once that's filed, she's done." I looked down at the document, the official seal stamped across the top. For the first time in weeks, it felt like I could breathe. Across the street, Linda was still shouting into her phone, but the sound barely reached me. The storm she'd built around herself had finally turned inward, and this time there'd be no gate left to hide behind. By evening, the entire neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. The county trucks were gone, but their tire tracks still marked the asphalt outside the clubhouse, a reminder that authority had finally crossed the line Linda thought she owned. Word had spread fast. The HOA board was hosting a community forum to address the inspection. Everyone knew what that meant. Damage control. When I arrived, the clubhouse parking lot was already full. Neighbors crowded the entrance, whispering in low voices, clutching their phones like weapons. Inside, folding chairs faced a podium draped with the Silver Pines banner. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, sharp and unforgiving. I could see Linda Bracewell at the front, flanked by two board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Her confidence was gone, replaced by a tight, brittle smile that didn't reach her eyes. As I walked in, conversations faltered. Someone muttered, "That's him." Another whispered, "He saved the ambulance." I ignored it all and took a seat in the middle row. The air smelled like fear and fresh paper. On the podium, a microphone crackled to life. "Good evening," Linda began, voice trembling slightly. "I know there's been a lot of confusion and misinformation circulating about recent events. Tonight, we'll clarify everything and restore order." A few people in the crowd scoffed. She continued, pretending not to hear. The gate malfunction was an unfortunate technical issue. It was not due to negligence. The inspection was routine, and the county found no major safety concerns. That was a lie, and she said it with the confidence of someone who thought the truth could be buried under tone. I looked around. People were already exchanging uneasy glances. One man stood up from the back. "Then why'd the county shut it down?" he asked. Linda's smile flickered. "Temporary measure," she said quickly. "We're cooperating fully." Another voice called out, sharper this time. "Your brother's company installed that gate, didn't it?" She froze. The question hung in the air like static. Well, yes, but that's common practice. He's a trusted vendor." That was all it took. The murmurs turned into a wave of questions, fast, overlapping, furious. "Trusted? His license expired," someone shouted. "What about the deleted footage?" another demanded. Phones rose in every direction, recording. The truth was no longer a whisper. It was an avalanche. I stood up. "You're lying to everyone," I said evenly. The inspector found unlicensed work, falsified maintenance reports, and criminal obstruction of emergency access. You know what the county called it? Public endangerment. Linda's gavel slammed against the table. "You don't have the floor, Mr. Rourke." "No," I said, "but the county does." I held up a copy of Morales' preliminary report, the official seal glinting under the lights. "This document confirms that your system violated 4 sections of the state safety code, and here's the footage proving you personally ordered emergency responders to wait outside while a patient flatlined inside the neighborhood." The crowd went silent. Even the hum of the lights seemed dim. Linda's face drained of color as I connected my laptop to the projector on the wall. The video flickered to life. The same recording Paulie had saved. There she was, in cold grayscale, blocking the ambulance, waving her clipboard like a sword. The silence broke into gasps, a few curses, one muffled sob. "Is that you, Linda?" a woman in the front row whispered. She tried to speak, but the words came out fractured. That's taken out of context." "There's no context for this," I said. "You abused authority, you falsified reports, and you endangered lives for the sake of control." The board members beside her quietly stood up and stepped back. One of them muttered, "I didn't sign off on any of this." Linda's voice rose in desperation. "You don't understand. I was protecting the community. We can't have random outsiders breaching the gates." "The only outsiders who breached anything," I cut in, "were the paramedics trying to save our neighbors." The room erupted. People shouted, demanding her resignation. Phones streamed the chaos live. Every ounce of fear she had cultivated for years dissolved under the heat of public outrage. Linda pounded the gavel again, but it was useless now. Even Paulie, standing by the back wall, looked up at her, no longer afraid, just done. "You wanted order," I said. "You got it. The county's taking over. You're finished here." She looked around, realizing the crowd wasn't hers anymore. The power she'd hoarded through fines and threats evaporated in a single breath. The HOA that once obeyed her now looked ready to bury her. The next morning, the HOA meeting was moved outdoors to the community courtyard, by demand, not choice. Word had spread beyond Silver Pines now. A local reporter and a camera crew were there, setting up under the trimmed hedges. Neighbors filled the space in clusters, some angry, some curious, all waiting for the spectacle they knew was coming. I stood near the back, arms crossed, the county's official inspection file tucked under my arm. The report was public record now, and every word inside it was a nail in Linda Bracewell's coffin. She arrived late, flanked by 2 board members and her lawyer, moving fast, chin high, but eyes darting everywhere. Even in daylight, she looked cornered. Someone muttered, "She's finished." Another answered, "Not till she admits it." The county had called this a public compliance hearing, but everyone knew it was an execution of power, reputation, and denial. Inspector Morales stood by a portable podium, microphone clipped to his collar. His calm authority cut through the murmurs like wind through dry grass. "Good morning, residents," he began. "We're here to present the findings of our investigation into Silver Pines Estate's gate access systems and related safety protocols." He paused just long enough for silence to settle. Our inspection concluded that the system was installed without county authorization, without a valid contractor's license, and without emergency response integration. As of this morning, the HOA's liability exposure stands at approximately $70,000, and counting. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones went up again. I watched Linda's face harden. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she shook her head, refusing to step back. "This is absurd," she snapped. "Those systems were replaced under community consent. We had board approval. The residents signed off." Morales didn't even flinch. "We reviewed your minutes, Mrs. Bracewell. There is no record of any approval. In fact, your last meeting agenda shows no mention of security expenditures at all." The crowd began to murmur again, angrier this time. "You endangered lives!" someone shouted. "You locked out an ambulance!" another yelled. Linda slammed her hands down on the podium. "I did what I had to do to protect this community from chaos." That was the moment I stepped forward. "No," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You did what you had to do to protect control. There's a difference." Every head turned. Morales gave a small nod, allowing me the floor. I held up the inspection file. "This report doesn't just prove negligence, it proves corruption. The system was installed by her brother's company under a fake maintenance record. She forced an employee to falsify documents and delete emergency logs. That employee came forward." The crowd parted slightly as Paulie Tran stepped out from the side, shoulders stiff, face pale. He looked terrified. But he was there, and in that moment, it was enough. "Tell them," I said softly. Paulie took a breath and faced the crowd. "She told me to erase the footage," he said. "She said it would cause hysteria. When I refused, she said she'd make sure I never worked again. I deleted it, but I kept a copy." The air shifted. That single confession was heavier than any report or rule. Linda's lawyer tried to interrupt, but Morales held up a hand. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Mr. Tran's statement is consistent with our findings. The county will be referring this to the district attorney's office for review." Linda's color drained, completely. "You can't do that," she said faintly. "It was an accident." I stepped closer. "Accidents don't come with forged invoices." Someone in the crowd started clapping, then another. Within seconds, the courtyard was filled with applause, not polite, but cathartic. A release of everything the residents had been afraid to say for years. Linda looked around, eyes glassy, her composure finally cracking. "You're destroying me," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourself." Morales closed his folder. "Effective immediately, you are suspended from the HOA board pending investigation. The community will elect an interim president next week." As the applause swelled again, Linda turned away, shoulders trembling, the illusion of power gone. Paulie stood beside me, breathing hard but steady, the crowd's approval washing over him like absolution. Silver Pines had found its voice again, and this time, it wasn't afraid. When the crowd finally dispersed, the courtyard was littered with folded flyers, empty coffee cups, and the faint echo of applause still hanging in the warm Nevada air. The The gate that once stood as Silver Pine's symbol of order now sat dismantled in pieces by the curb, its panels stacked neatly, stripped of authority. For the first time since moving here, the air felt open, free. I stayed behind as residents left in groups, talking faster than they had in months. They weren't whispering anymore. They were planning. There was talk of a new election, of restoring transparency, of rebuilding the community that Linda had turned into her private kingdom. Even those who'd defended her looked shaken, realizing how close we'd come to tragedy. Polly stood beside me near the gate, holding a cup of gas station coffee, watching the remains of the metal frame sparkle in the late afternoon sun. "Never thought I'd see this place quiet again," he said. "It's the right kind of quiet," I replied. "No fear in it anymore." He nodded slowly. "They're gonna ask me to stay on, you know, security supervisor." I told them I'd think about it. "You should," I said. "You earned that." He laughed under his breath, rubbing the back of his neck. "Guess I'm still trying to believe I did the right thing." "You did," I said firmly. "The truth's heavier than silence, but it's the only thing that keeps the ground from collapsing under you." He smiled faintly, then handed me a folded envelope. Morales dropped this off before he left. Said it's a copy of the final report. Inside was the county seal, official, clean, absolute. HOA violation confirmed, immediate suspension of board authority pending judicial review, safety systems to remain under county supervision until new elections are held. Reading it felt like closing a loop I'd been trapped inside for too long. The gate wasn't just metal. It had been a wall around all of us, built on arrogance and fear. Now it was gone, and what replaced it wasn't vengeance. It was accountability. That evening, the sun dipped behind the mountains, and the neighborhood came alive again. Kids rode bikes down the street where emergency lights had once flashed. Someone strung up lights across their porch. A man I barely knew waved to me for the first time. At home, Emily sat by the window with her tea, her oxygen tank beside her. The last rays of sunlight caught the silver threads in her hair. She looked stronger now, still fragile, but smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. "I heard about the hearing," she said softly. "You finally did it." I set the report on the table. We did it. The county's taking over the systems until a new board's elected. Her eyes filled, not with tears, but pride. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "You said no one would ever wait for help again." "I wasn't the only one," I said. "Paulie came through. Morales stood his ground. Even the neighbors, they stopped pretending it wasn't happening." She reached for my hand. "You know," she said, "that gate might have kept people out, but it also trapped everyone inside their fear. Maybe that's why it had to fall." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The neighborhood beyond the window looked peaceful. Open sky, quiet streets, no barriers between life and help. It was everything she deserved when she moved here. A few days later, I watched as county workers installed the new emergency system, one I'd personally helped design years ago. Certified, connected, flawless. They mounted a small metal plaque beside it, engraved with simple words, "In honor of community, safety, and courage." It wasn't my name on it, but that didn't matter. It was everyone's victory. The people who spoke up, the witnesses who stepped forward, and the lives that would never again hang in the balance because of paperwork and pride. That night, I took one last walk to the edge of the street. The new gate opened automatically for a fire truck passing by. Silent, efficient, perfect. I stood there watching until its taillights disappeared into the dark. Linda Bracewell's house sat dark and empty now, her name removed from the community board. Word was, she'd sold her property quietly and left the state. Power was gone, but the damage she'd done had built something stronger than fear. Unity. When I turned back toward home, the stars were coming out, one by one. For the first time, Silver Pines didn't look like a fortress. It looked like a neighborhood again. And maybe that's all we ever wanted. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.